So, my last video I showed you guys how to take apart the entire hub assembly and replace the rotor and hub assembly back together. Today on this video I'm going to be showing you how to put it all back together. I'm not using my old caliper, so I'm just going to show you with the new caliper without the hose hooked up on there. So, a couple things you want to pay attention to. I'm using new hub bolts, the hub assembly bolts for that mount the hub bearing assembly to the spindle. I bought new ones just because I stripped out a couple of the old ones. Make sure you're using red thread locker on those. Those are some bolts you don't want backing out. I usually put a very, very light coat of grease on this metal face here. What that does, it prevents the hub bearing assembly from rusting itself and seizing onto the spindle if it ends up staying on here for a long time. Same thing right here on the axle shaft. You don't want your hub assembly seizing onto that. It makes it just a pain. But on that same note, you also want to have a very, very light coating. You don't want this grease to heat up at some point and ooze out onto your rotors and ruin your brakes. So again, it just needs to be very, very light just to make sure that these two surfaces don't rust together at some point. So right down here, I've got the whole brake rotor assembly with the hub bearing assembly all put together. The backing plate just kind of sandwiches itself right between the bearing assembly and the spindle. So you just want to situate that with this opening up towards the ABS sensor. I went ahead and painted these just because I'm anal like that. Hopefully I got enough good lighting here to show you guys what I'm doing. Let me adjust this camera back up. So I'll turn it this way just a little bit so we can kind of see how I'm working it onto there. So I like to pull the axle all the way up into the housing just so I can make sure that it's ready to set the bearing on there. Now the heavy lifting part. So if you have a partner, it does make it a lot easier because you've got to line up your axle and also your spindle bolt holes. So I'm just sitting on a Home Depot bucket right now. It kind of puts me at a good height for this being on jack stands. So make sure you're watching out for that ABS cable while you do this. Like I said before in my last video, it's an expensive mistake to mess that up. So you just kind of set it in there and hopefully just get it to, if your axle doesn't want to stay put, just try to get it situated as best you can. Of course, this one doesn't want to go in. So I'll pull that back out. Of course, when I do the video, it's going to give me trouble. I just did the passenger side and it went pretty smooth. Should have videotaped that side. There we go. Okay, again, pay attention to make sure you're not pinching this ABS cable between any pieces of metal. I got mine up here under the caliper by mistake. You can actually just feed it back behind the rotor. It'll fit in there. If you've got to wiggle it out a little bit, you can too. Make sure it's not caught up on anything before you start driving these bolts home. And then make sure you have all of your brackets out of the way. So I'll take and just kind of plug this up here so that it's holding itself out of the way for now. Okay, so from here, you're just going to take your new bolts. I've already put thread locker on mine. So you got new bolts with the 15mm socket, and just make sure you get that all the way on. So take your spindle nut. I put a little tiny bit of grease around here just to make sure the torque settings are right. This nut, I believe, for this year, I want to say it's 92 and earlier, or 92 and later, so that'll be all the newer than 92 is 100 and, or forgive me, it's 95, which is this model, is 180 pounds, and then 96 and newer, I believe, is 165. So, and then these bolts back here that hold the hub assembly to the spindle, those are going to be 133, I believe. So again, make sure you're using your red thread locker. Just feed those into the same 4 holes. It's only about the last few inches of thread. Before you get there, you got to line up the holes. So make sure you do that before you try to drive your bolts on. So you just want to spin the bearing assembly until you're pretty close to lined up, and then take your bolts and line them up with the backing plate and hub assembly. I'm still a little bit off, but you can see it from the back when you're you'll feel when they grab. I try to spin these in as much as I can by hand, just to make sure I'm not getting cross-threaded. And you'll have to wiggle that backing plate around a little bit to make sure that you are getting all your holes lined up. And before you even start driving anything home, make sure that your axle spindle and all that is seated into this fully. You don't want to drive these home and have your axle just a little bit off kilter. Trying to think what else I can throw in there while I'm doing this. I have my steering wheel unlocked right now so that I can turn these by hand without getting up and down each time. I was thinking about buying one of those little fancy garage stools. They wanted like $50 for it at the parts store. I figured my $8 or $5 Home Depot bucket was sufficient enough. So, and if you're not getting them to line quite up, just grab one of your lug studs and just kind of wiggle it, and you'll feel it let loose, so that you can drive those bolts in. And then I just kind of get them set on the face with this little impact gun. And that just pulls everything tight. This is absolutely not a tool to use to be setting your actual torque settings. You'll want to use a torque wrench. And like I said, these back ones on the hub assembly are 133 foot-pounds, which is pretty tight. And you would believe it when you were trying to take them off. They're on there really good. So let's see. So same thing with your spindle nut. Do not use an impact gun to set your torques on those. Most of the good parts stores will loan you a torque wrench, so just spend a few bucks. If some of them do it for free, don't use these impacts to set your torque settings on this stuff. just use it to kind of snug it up so that everything's on there. And then once I'm all done and I got everything together, I'll go back and set all my torque settings. So once you get all that on, all it is a matter of taking your caliper. This is a brand new caliper, remanufactured actually, but just set your pads in there. These outside pads just snap in, and then the inner pad snaps into the little bore. Like I said on my last video, I'm upgrading this 3/4 ton Suburban to the 1 ton dually brake system. I did some measurements, and I'll see if I can post the picture somewhere for you guys. The brake rotors were about 1/4 inch thicker. The actual caliper opening was almost 5/16 of an inch wider, and then the actual piston in the caliper was almost 1/4 inch wider. So you're getting much thicker rotors and a bigger surface area of the piston pushing onto the rotor. So I'm also, like I said, I'm not using this old caliper. I'm going to be replacing it with the lines with stainless steel braided lines. So I'm just going to wait, bolt this up, bolt my stainless steel braided lines onto here, and just hook it all up at one time so that I'm not having to dump a bunch of fluid out. I just flushed these brakes a few months ago. So one thing you're going to want to do on that, let me finish this up and then I'll give you guys some other tips. So to make sure you have the right caliper, if you are buying new calipers, your bleed screw's going to go up. You don't want that pointing down. So, but just to show you guys that all of these bigger 1 ton parts bolt up, it's a perfect fit. And you can see once you get it on there, it's just a matter of getting the screws in. Let me see if I can turn this so you guys can see a little better. So you can see that rotor is way thicker than the old rotors. So I got someone trying to call me right now, so take and get these started, and then I'll take the impact gun just to set them. These caliper bolts, factory torque setting is 38 foot-pounds, so don't go super tight on these. You don't want to compress the slide pins on this and get them kind of mushroomed out. Some people will take and just hammer them on with an impact gun, and it's just bad news. It'll destroy your caliper and everything. I've done quite a few of these brake sets, so 38 foot-pounds is pretty easy just to kind of set by feel. So, and it's not a ton, so make sure you're not wrenching down on these. So, and that's it for your assembly. If I were using this old caliper, it would just be as simple as setting it on and bolting it up, and then maybe going back, make sure all your torque settings are in. Take your ABS sensor. If you got new hub bearing assemblies, go through and make sure that you're getting them snapped into all the brackets. A lot of these come with new brackets. So I'm going to go back through and unbolt all these old rusty brackets and put the new ones in. Trying to think if I missed anything that would help you guys out. But I think that's pretty much it. You know, it's a ton of work, and these heavier brake systems are pretty heavy. So it definitely goes a bit faster if you have a partner helping you out. But it can be done in your garage, and at least that way you're not paying the local brake shop an arm and a leg to do a simple brake setup. I think these rotors cost from Rock Auto. I got these rotors for about $55 a piece. The calipers. I wasn't able to send a core in because I upgraded to the bigger calipers, so I had to eat that core charge. But they were still $56 a piece for the calipers. I like centric brake parts. These are the centric extended wear. I believe they're a semi-metallic. Those were like $28, not terrible. The biggest cost here was going to be the hub bearing assembly. Those are $135 each. I went with the Reassembly unit because it seemed like the best quality for the price at the time. So, but yeah, that's it. That's the 1-ton dually brake upgrade. If you have any questions, go ahead and post it in the comments. I'll see if I can get them answered for you guys. Thanks for watching.